Hello and welcome to the third in our series of virtual happy hour / contests brought to you by In the Money Media, Breeders' Cup, and our friends at Horseplayer.com. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal. Happy to be back with you afternoon, and that's a good thing. And I am here today with the two gentlemen, and I use that term loosely, who've been with me for both of these other shows in their entirety, starting off in some unusual attire today. We'll have to ask him about that. He is still on the planet Texas. Where else would he be? He is the People's Champion, Jonathan Kitchen. What is up?
Word, PTF. Yeah, I went ahead and I didn't want you to be the only one that thought they could rock a hat and still look good. So I thought I'd try to show you up a little bit. It's very, very typical. It's what happens usually. I show you up. So I figured why not do it in the apparel department as well.
It's a nice hat. I like it. I wish I had donned my Afro wig, which I did not. It's in the shop, unfortunately. I was reminding you of the story. We filmed a little thing at Keeneland back in the fall. Sorry, that's me. That's my Gulfstream feed being too loud. We filmed a little thing at Gulfstream in the fall, and we were trying to interview various goofy people. And there was some goofy dude wearing an Afro wig, and we thought it would be an amusing interview to have you, JK, talk to him. And you went up to him, and he said, "Oh, actually, I'm very shy. I don't want the attention." So why the heck are you wearing an Afro wig to a tailgate if you don't want anyway? I really decided.
I do remember now.
Yeah, he was.
When you said it off air, I didn't remember. I do remember. Yeah, you're an idiot.
Yeah, why would you wear people at Keeneland that day
if you don't want attention? Exactly, 100%.
You can't have it both ways, pal. But our next guest, a man who has it any way he wants. He's got so much stuff going on. He also has an interesting hat on. We'll talk to him about that. He is the host of the eponymous Matt Bernier Show. You know him as TV's Matt Bernier around here. Matt, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, guys. How are we holding up here? And I don't know for Pete or Jonathan what your length is at this point. We're at the end of week 4 of this thing, and I think we're just kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, getting used to it. You know, it took a little while. It was a bit of shell shocked at first. I'm not saying I don't want to be outside and be able to do a bunch of different things, but at the same time, I think now we're at least finding a rhythm, finding a little bit of a happy medium where we can sit back and say, okay, well, this is kind of the new normal for the time being. But yeah, we're doing all right. Everything seems to be okay. And knock on wood, the racing continues. And we've got a couple of good ones here this afternoon.
Tell me about the hat. Is that Lyle Stables or St. Andrews? Is it a Scottish flag? What's going on up there?
This is a Scottish flag. We went over to Scotland, not this past October, the October prior. And I saw someone walking around with one of them, and I couldn't find where they bought it. So when I got back over here, I started searching around. I eventually just found a random place on the internet. I mean, look, the internet's amazing. You can find the best and the worst of whatever you're looking for. So I searched it, found it, and I'm very pleased with the $18 purchase that I made.
That's very, very cool. Big fan of Scotland. Wonderful golf courses. Best whiskey in the world. No offense to my friends from Kentucky. I think that even they have to admit they've got it pretty good over there in Scotland, though I do love the USA stuff as well. All right. We've got a contest. Unlike last week, we're doing this where the whole contest is going to take place within the confines of this show. The money, it's a $20 buy-in, and it goes to charity. And the charities, the main beneficiaries, the money that you put up will directly go to, the VIG will directly go to Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and also the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. We have also, along with our friend Kim Weir, made a little amendment to our page over at the TRF site, trfinc.org/players. That's trfinc.org/players. We've added a button on there that will take you directly to the Racetrack Chaplaincy of New York, so you can aid to their charitable efforts as well. This was a very good call by JK 2 weeks ago. In addition to trying to encourage people to donate to these equine charities, also to donate to people in need. And obviously New York, the epicenter in the U.S. of this crisis, and Belmont Park Aqueduct specifically been hit. This is a way you can help out there and make a donation. If you do well in this contest, if you're just feeling generous, if you end up with some sort of parimutuel hit based on any of the advice that we give you today, we encourage you to do that as well. So are you guys both entered in the contest? Matt, do you have one entry or two or three in this thing?
One entry for me, typically, and I don't know what Jonathan thinks or anyone else that playing these sort of things with the pick and pray. I usually just put in one and say, look, if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't feel like it does me. I don't want to say it doesn't do me any good. Obviously, you have more opportunities if you can spread out and use different horses. But for these pick and prays, I usually just put in one play and see whatever happens. For the live entries, depending on what the contest is, I'm not opposed to playing with two and kind of zigging and zagging when we get a little bit farther on. But for these, I just fire it in and say, whatever happens, happens.
I think that's a fair approach. JK, how do you do it?
I like having two. I like having two entries. So what look, last week I did one serious one. I did one that were all twos. This week, I kind of liked my early opinion. So I did the same picks on both. And then I used two different horses that should be prices on the last leg. So I'm just hoping I'm in contention going into Tampa, and going into Tampa 8, and I got two horses that can try to get me there. So I like to have two. Now, I think if you're playing two, you're playing different on every race and on both entries, I think that's probably wrong. You're going to zig and zag way too much there. I think the best way to do it is to, I think for a while I had a rule that on 70% of the entries, I had to have the same horse to play with two, and then I could spread on the other three. And that's when I was playing when TRF had their tournament site and I was trying to qualify for a bunch of stuff. And that was kind of my rule for playing multiple entries and pick and praise.
Makes sense. We are about to begin. We've got 2 minutes to the first contest race, Gulfstream race number 4. Head over to horseplayers.com. It's not too late to join us. I will go ahead and retweet this link one more time if you just want to go to my Twitter, which is @LoomsBoldly. If you have questions during the course of this show and you want them answered by anybody on the panel, we're going to have some other guests in here later as well with Marshall Gramm and Nick Tammaro scheduled to join us. So if you have questions for any of all of us, hit me up on Twitter. What's up, JK?
Well, real quick, I mean, we're like you said, we're down to the wire here. So I don't know. How do you handle signing up for a contest that's pick and pray that's about to start in 2 minutes Gulfstream time? What the heck do you do?
I would say if you want to support the crowd, you go ahead and you play all the fours and put your $20 in the pot and you hope to get lucky. That would be my answer.
You know what else I've done before is I've gone to Timeform US and I've through the pace projector and I just put every horse that's projected to be on the lead.
Somebody was speculating that at some point during Ray Arsenault's magic run at this year's NHC that he was identifying who the speed was going to be and playing the speed all the time. Came up with some winners that way. So maybe not the worst idea in the world as far as that goes. How about you, Matt? Any last-minute strategies before we quickly talk about this fourth race at Gulfstream?
No, I mean, I know some folks, like let's say you are a sort of last second player, you're hopping in right now. I know some folks will really take a look at the tote board. This is going to really be the only opportunity that you get. I suppose you can look at Tampa's as well to see at least what the odds kind of look like as opposed to what we'll have down the line. But for me, it kind of does maintain the idea that it's, 6-7 races today? It's only 6 races. You need winners when it's all said and done. And these are the shorter ones where, look, if you have a giant price, obviously you're going to separate yourself from everyone else. But I kind of lean a little bit more toward just kind of sticking with my guns and playing who I like in here as opposed to trying to really take stabs at wild prices that may be very less probable as far as win contenders are concerned.
Let's talk about this race about to go at Gulfstream. JK, we'll start with you. What are you doing in the contest, and what advice do you have for folks looking to get involved pari-mutually? Because, of course, we're also encouraging folks to be playing along with us at home during this whole thing.
Well, I'm going to do that thing where I talk really slow so I can find race 4 and remember who I picked. I believe I picked a 7. Oh, I picked a 7, Quiet Company. They are they're dirt sprinting here, and I thought it was kind of between 2 horses, 2 or 3 horses. The 3 down on the inside, the 5 bird map. And then I went with the 7 just because he's outside. He's drawn outside. He didn't run that well last time turf sprinting, but he's got some numbers back that made a little bit of sense. And so then also, I believe, dropping in maiden special weight to maiden 50, like I said last week on the show, I'm giving a lot more respect to droppers during these unsure times. We made a joke, not a joke. We made a comment yesterday that wasn't meant to be a joke. That it's my version of calling it Corona capping. It's just, it's a different time, and there's a lot of different stuff going on, and you'd be making a mistake if you didn't take that into consideration. We pointed out a horse on the show yesterday that Brad Cox is going to be running tomorrow in an allowance race that had 2 starts on the turf. And why is he running on the dirt? Because where else is Brad Cox going to run the horse?
There are definitely some different rules applying. Earlier in the week, we did the show with Rich Averill about the Tampa carryover, and he really walked us through the thought process of an owner and talked about how different it is now, and even his behavior as a successful claiming guy, how different it is now than it is usually. So, I mean, there is something to it. The changing state of the world definitely is going to change the way you look at races, and it's going to continue as we go on over the next few months. Matt, let's talk about this 4th race at Gulfstream. JK going with the 7, gave a little push to the 3 and the 5 as horses maybe to use with in exotics. How do you see it? Who did you play?
I didn't have a real strong opinion in this race. I had a hard time separating many of them. We've got a number of drop-down horses going from special weight into the claiming for the first time. I went with the 7 also. She's 9-2. I thought it was interesting. She was entered against boys yesterday as well for a slightly smaller tag for 32 as opposed to the 50 here. And look, I'm just going to kind of echo everything Jonathan said. She's shown speed. I'm not going to hold that turf race against her. It was her first start in a number of months. I assume she's some fitness out of that. She's had a bit of a bad habit of stopping when the real running starts down late in the lane. But compared to some of the other horses, I didn't think there was anyone in here that had a discernible edge on anyone. Like Bird Map can win. I understand that took a ton of money early on. I think it was like 2-5 when the old wagering opened up for this race. Figures to land somewhere in this 7-8-5 range. But the other horses down toward the inside, I just didn't. Teenage Kid can run well. Carolyn Smile with the equipment change can run well. I don't love any of them. When it all comes down to the point where I don't love anyone, give me the speed. Give me the horse I think is going to be on the top, and that's the 7.
2 votes for the 7 here. A very square 4-1 into the teeth of the heavy 7-5 favorite, who's the number 5. JK also mentioned the 3, but plenty of different ways folks can go if you were just playing the odds board here. But JK, you were pretty much against the 1 and the 2. Would you go so far as to say?
The 2 is coming in not off of a long break, but a little bit of a break, and it hasn't really done. The figure hasn't been good enough to get me kind of going here. The 1 seems like a turf horse drawn down to the inside. I think that when you're the turf to dirt switch is significantly harder if you draw the rail, because there's a lot of opportunity for things to happen that you've never experienced before. And the main one being not breaking us swiftly, especially with the cutback horse, and then eating a lot of dirt. I think that can kind of throw horses off. So, and I'm just trying to stay away from inside horses in North America racing in general as a whole. Just we talk about it on the show all the time, that the rails have seemed to become a little bit more of a challenge at racetracks all across the country. So I always downgrade inside drawn horses, horses that project to get onto the rail.
Elaborate on that. There's a lot of new people watching, JK. We've got a lot of people playing in this tournament, might be tuning in for the first time. I take the point that the rails have not been as good, it seems, the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, as they were in the past. To what do you attribute that?
Well, I mean, I think that, look, I don't know exactly the reason. I've heard, I've had a conversation with Hall of Fame and champion jockeys that believe that there's a possibility that a safer racetrack is one in which riders are not fighting to get to a position. A lot less bad things can happen when there's not a mad rush to get to the rail to save ground. I've also heard the argument that that this trend that I'm not even sure if is right, that deeper is safer, and I think that maybe that when you try to make a racetrack deeper, the rail ends up being part of the equation there. So
okay, I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to cut you off just because the race is gone. I think we were going to try to see if we can show this race live. Is that right, Producer Craig? We're going to try that. Oh, we're not going to do that. Never mind.
We're well behind anyway at this point. Waterfall right now.
Matt, you're usually most ahead. What's happening?
Top of the lane. Yeah, Carolyn Smile broke like a shot. It looks like Bird Map's got a full head of steam, might be able to run her down. But it's those two. It's either the 3 or the 5. I think the 5 is going to end up getting by when it's all said and done. Might have spoken too soon. No, 5-3. So 8-5 over 7-2.
Okay, there you go. So what? Any excuse for your guys' pick? Quiet Company, the 7 in there.
I didn't think. I think
actually,
the big. It's not an excuse. Just the 3 broke like a shot.
Gotcha. Yeah, it comes.
Yeah, Pete, I didn't even see the race.
Jonathan.
I was too busy wasting my time talking to you. I'm just kidding. I just didn't see it. I turned it on too late and I missed it.
JK, did you want to button up that thought before we bring in our first extracurricular guest here?
Yeah, well, I just think it's important to note because a couple of reasons. One is that there's a lot of speed figures and speed figures that I don't. There's a speed figure that give extra credit for ground loss, and I think that right. So, but I think that like in this day and age, when there's a higher probability that the rail wasn't great, that figure can be misleading. That's the first thing. The second thing is that geometry tells you that a horse that saved ground had a good trip, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's a case. So I think there's some opportunities if you can look through the world through those lenses.
I think that makes sense to me. Matt, is it something that is it a trend that you have noticed and or agree with as somebody who pays attention to track profiles? You gave us that great capsule description on the show last week about track profiles and how you use them. Have you noticed that trend as well?
Well, I think just kind of a broader picture that, common sense says the inside is the shortest way around, which is not wrong. I mean, that's factual, but kind of to Jonathan's point, I feel like the rail is the position of a racetrack that can change more dramatically than perhaps the outer areas of the track, whether it is weather, whether it is track maintenance, whether it is a number of different things, for better or for worse. It can either end up turning into a highway or it can end up being just a complete dead rail. And if you go down there, you got no chance. I also have just got to the point now, too, especially with horses that are inexperienced. Down on the inside, everybody and their brother's trying to come over. You're going to end up with some sort of trouble unless you break on top. I think you need to have a horse that is either just a confirmed front runner where you have no way to go but forward, or you need to look at it and say it's a horse that's come from dead last, and you're going to be comfortable allowing your rider or whomever it is the connections to say, we're going to take back, try to make one run, let everything else play out in front of us the way they will, and just try to, roll past everyone. But we know on dirt in the United States, it's just not a conducive running style, or a running style conducive to victory. So I kind of agree with Jonathan for all the reasons he laid out, and for that on top of it. I think you have a lot of things going against you if you're breaking down in the 1 hole or even the 2.
And we've seen in the past where there's this correlation. Years ago, I'd say there was more of a correlation between speed and inside and closers and outside. And I would just add to this observation to piggyback on that's a little bit out the window. And we've seen a lot of days in North American racing over the last 2 years where it's speed and outside. And that's the most dangerous of all. And so some of those usual ways of thinking that horse players have developed over the course of their lives can be a little bit out the window. We have a leaderboard. It's showing up a little bit cloudy on my screen, so I'm going to try to click over to it to see if I can read it independently here. Can either of you guys read that well? Do you want to run through the top few entries, or at least let us know what the prize structure is going to be today? I'll take the.
I can take that if Jonathan is.
Okay.
My bad.
I didn't know. I didn't know if JK was going to hop in. You got.
I'm on the right page.
Top
now.
21. Okay. Top
It's
21.
Top 21 entries are going to win a $179 entry into Saturday's BC qualifier. And jumping out to an early lead, we've got a lot of away tie. I'd have to actually count. It won't tell me how many people are there, but right now it certainly looks like more than 20. I'll just
32.
read the 32 have the first winner. And we won't run them all down, but we'll hit some names of note. Listed first in leaderboard at the moment. Eugene Cahalan, who I interviewed years ago, I believe, a Western New York horse player, listed second. Pete Acasella, a name, somebody who I might have talked to back in the DRF days, but I've been meaning to. Sarah Wiener, who I've known for years, up there. Michael Odorosio, James Connors, the horse owner from California. Dylan Donnelly among the names there. Dylan, who I plan on interviewing next week. I know he's had an unbelievable journey, young man making a run at the NHC Tour this year. Tony Joe, all 3 entries hit that. Tony Joe, the first week we did this, won into the qualifier from our feeder and ended up winning a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge entry. Nick McMurdy, another name that has more than one. Chris Couples, who we met at the NHC. Matt Vagvolgi, Sean Borman's favorite horse player. He has hit the first winner and is up there. He helped us out on that Tampa show as well. Adam Yoler, Jim Mackingvale, a name who's up there. JK, I know you've been dealing with his team with your broadcasts and the last few weeks. What do you think about Mattress Mac having his name up there?
I think it's awesome. Obviously, Mac's been super supportive of the game with all of the I get it. There's a two-side marketing run happy, but he's also supporting a lot of industry operations. The Fox shows they're a big part of that, and they're a big part of a lot of things. But then, we were highlighting on the Fox show this weekend just all like the charity stuff that they do and referring with, and it's unbelievable. They're giving away free meals you can pull up now for and 1 meal per car for kids or elderly or whatever. So that's always good to see him in the mix. And then my guy Hunter Archibald, by the way, who I'm gonna try to do a podcast with. He's a new horse player. We met playing in video game contests like Madden, NCAA football in college, and he is all in. He texts me every day talking about plays he's making, and
awesome.
And so that's exciting. It's I don't think there's any such thing as a silver lining during all of this, but one positive that's come from this is that our game's got some attention on it. That's fun.
A lot of people. I see JK. I see Matt Bernier. I see our next guest who's about to come in. We've got a minute to Tampa Bay. It looks like it might be less than that. Let's give quick thoughts on this race, starting with you, Jonathan. What do you like in this race at Tampa Bay? Try to get people a chance to get a bet in.
I played the 3. Oh, no, wait. Sorry. I played the of course, I can't find it. I got it right here. I played the Jesus, where am I at? The 1.
Matt Bernier, who do you like in this race at Tampa Bay?
I played the 3, the one that he initially brought up, Sky D. Sky D for me was just one of those where coming from Gulfstream over to Tampa, to me, always a little bit of hidden class relief. Made the move into the teeth of the pace. I didn't love that she didn't outfinish the pace setter that day, but it's come back to be a relatively decent race as far as figures are concerned. 5-2, 2-1, somewhere in there, I expect when it's all said and done. She's 5-2 now. I think she's a very likely winner.
JK, you got your act wired on straight, as it were?
I do. They're in for 10. This horse is dropping from 20. Has 2 races back. I thought were good enough. It's had a little bit of trouble in his last start. Will save ground. Just needs to get lucky and produce 1 run to get the job done here.
Which number is that?
The 1, Sinatra Devil.
All right. So we've got the 1 for JK, the 3 for Matt Bernier. Our plan will be we will watch this race at Tampa, and then we will bring in our first guest. That's what I said originally, and then, of course, completely forgot about it. But, that's how it goes with these shows sometimes. I've been attempting to teach myself Spanish and do learning about the weather in Spanish all day. My brain is mush. You can probably hear on these shows lately. I haven't been quite as articulate or on the ball as usual. Cost of doing business.
Hace frío.
In Texas, I'm surprised.
No, see, I say that's not hace caliente. It's whatever.
Hace calor.
Very good stuff. Now, have you done any of the homeschooling yet, JK? Has this been part of your responsibilities?
No, we've been just trying to keeping him in one place at the moment, but I have been. He does a lot of like Zoom on like classes online and like Google Hangouts where he's doing a lot of Spanish stuff. So I'll just hop on and like watch. So that's been fun to kind of watch him, but I haven't had to I haven't had to get down to the nitty gritty, but I am a certified teacher in the state of Texas. I mean, I was at one point. I mean, I haven't probably followed up with all of my requirements, but I could handle it.
Those poor children, JK. That's all I have to say. No, you were, from what I understand, you're good. I've met some of your former students, and when you would leave to inevitably go up and place a bet, I'd take them aside and be like, he was terrible, wasn't he? Just to make it really easy for them to tell the truth. And to a man, they have said you were actually a good teacher. Was it government you taught?
Government. I was more of a facilitator than a teacher. Had some nice rules. If you were late to school, it was fine as long as you brought breakfast for first period. So no tardies there. Sometimes when Coach JK had to do some handicapping, we would do this thing where we would all turn to page 78. That way, if someone came in, we looked like we were working, and that worked good. So, it all worked out. No harm, no foul.
Give me your professional opinion of the TV show Friday Night Lights. One of my good friends, Bernie Corbett, the famed Boston sports announcer. He announces Harvard football and BU hockey. You probably heard him at some point, Matt. He calls you Friday Night Lights. Were you a big fan of that show?
I watched a couple episodes. I mean, look, football is important. It means a lot here. It means a lot to the families, to the players, to the coaches, to the communities. That's why it's so special in Texas. But, not every school is nearly as dramatic as that show was.
Makes sense. So that's interesting. Maybe a little too close to home that you haven't even fully watched it. All right, just to recap, JK on the 1 at 6-5. JK taking the heavy chalk. No surprise there. Matt Bernier going with the 3 at 5-2. And again, you guys will be ahead of me, so feel free for one of you to talk us through so I don't make a fool of myself any more than I already have.
Gates opened. The 8 has cleared off to the front at 40-1. 1 is tucked in the pocket right now, a little bit keen. The 3 is just perched to the outside. They're actually 4 abreast. The 3 is very, very rank right now. The rider's just trying to strangle them back at this point. But they're about 4 deep going into the first turn. This is going to sound stupid. I didn't realize the rails were as far out as they are. It looks like Gulfstream at this point. But they're cooking along. They're doing their thing. 22-4 for the opening quarter mile. So there shouldn't be any lack of pace for these horses to run at. And now somebody's trying to make a wild brush on the far outside from the back of the pack. I don't know what's happening.
It sounds like chaos.
I mean, there's a horse that, and this is, again, I don't like to say anything bad about riders. There's a horse that's about 6 wide coming from the back. With this trip, you need to be 15 lengths the best to have any chance.
It's my theory that you see a lot of I don't know why, and Rich Averill told me it wasn't really true, but the jockeys are of particular importance at Tampa. That is my marginally held belief. After
you watch more and more of these races, I tend to agree with that. The 1 should have every chance right now. The 3 is not running. The 6 at 71-1 is in with a big chance to try to run down the 38-1 shot. Whoa! The 13-1 chance. The 2 is trying to rally, hanging on his left lead. Still might be able to go by everyone. The pace setter is still there. This could be, you're looking at 38-1 over a photo of 70-1 or 13-1 per second.
All right, let's just stop right there and say how in the pick and pray format that we're in, where all picks have to be in before the first race, this is a lot less. I mean, it's so early. I guess you wouldn't.
It might not. It might be over.
Yeah. Even in a live format, you would have to like the horse. But just a good example of how you want, if this had happened late, you'd have half the field like we saw last week playing the horse just because the number on the board. At least here, if you spent a bullet in the second race with chalk coming in the first race on this 38-1 shot, you needed to like the horse. And that's definitely a lot better than being able to just play the math in a short tournament.
Pete, a couple people had it, right? Tony Joe had it. He used 3 horses in the race. He had it. Chris Couples had it. Hunter Archibald, the guy I mentioned earlier, Nicholas Hemmingson had it. Drew Coatney of In the Money fame had it. Michael Bailey, Stephen Dudnath. That's just on the first page. Second, I mean, a lot of people had the horse. Sam
That's
Stinson.
amazing.
Yeah. So
what was the angle? I mean, for that many people to have it, this early on, this is not some, hey, I'm just playing shot. I'm assuming there's some angle here for this one.
He had a trip last time. He was 6 wide into the first turn at 21-1, and he just had but he's dropping in from 20. There's a way to get to this horse, an absolute way to get to him.
Well, if you were also looking at it from like a pace standpoint, this is a horse that in the runs 2 and 3 starts back, broke the maiden 2 starts back with a little bit of early foot, but 3 starts back, set wicked fractions early on. So, look, it's not a horse that I ever would have had, but I do understand, especially at this level, we're dealing with non-winners of 2 lifetime. These aren't horses that love to pass runners. So if you like a horse that has some early foot and you think you can make a case for him, good on you. The wild thing about this is here I am saying it's over. If you have the horse, you're probably going to be in. If you had the 6, you're going to get whatever the cap is for the place price too, because the horse was 70-1. So you're not totally dead. And I guess in an instance like this, but boy, if you didn't have either of those 2, you're going to need some chaos.
You got a lot of work to do. Let's run through, because this is something now that I do feel like these are. You've got just a massive leg up to get in, even with the 4 races left. Overall leader listed as Nicholas Hemmingson with 72.40. The aforementioned Hunter Archibald, 72.40. These are people who've had both winners. Chris Couples, Tony Joe. That's the top quartet. Then you have a group of players in a virtual tie for 5th. Sam Stinson, Stephen Dudenoff, Michael Bailey, and Drew Coatney. Brian Ivory, Mike Bailey, Robert Matthews, Gary Wright, Michael Webb, and Rick Broth, the former Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge winner. They're all at 64. Also at 64, Justin Dew, who left us a voicemail the other day on our voicemail hotline episode, and John Gasper, Billy Moore, Mike Boreal, and Dylan Donnelly. Now, so Dylan, on one of his entries, had the chalk in the first. On another one of his entries now has this bomb in the second race of the contest to bring him up to $64. Curtis Meyer, he's also listed in there as having that capper that just came in. And then 2 folks who had the place capper Matt was referring to. And funny enough, 2 of his castmates from the Horseplayers TV show from back in the day, Mike Bachok and Lee Davis. Not quite sure what about being on Horseplayers got you to that horse, but it happened. Yes, JK.
Pete, you scared me. You scared me when you said that.
Go ahead.
When you said that 2 of his castmates, I was a little bit concerned. I didn't want to be excited, but thank God it's 2 that I like.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. Looking at the board and just going back at the PPs, and I'm not just saying this to give those guys a hard time. Look, they had the horse. I would have a more difficult time making a case for the 6 and 8. I'd love to know what the argument is for the 6.
We text them. I'm sure you have one or both of those guys on speed dial, Matt. Let's see if we can hear the case.
All right,
and JK,
let's see if we can get that.
The guy you referred to, JK, my best guess is the next dollar he gives to charity will be the first. So I think we don't have to worry about him. Okay, it looks like we have our first guest ready to come into the chat here from Memphis, Tennessee. We have accomplished contest player, owner, horse player, whatever you want to call him, Professor Marshall Gramm. Marshall, how are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. Great to be here. Stabbing away.
We got the tech worked out. You're feeling confident?
Well, again, this contest kind of over a little bit, right? 4 races left, and you've got to get to $64, right, for the 19th spot. So maybe there's 1 spot left. So anyway, it was fun. It got me to turn on the TV and watch a little Tampa and Gulfstream. Normally, I'd be playing Oaklawn Park right now. So.
Are you concurrently, are you still participating at Oaklawn? You have anything there to mention to listeners for the rest of the day? We got a lot of people betting parimutually as well. And when folks do well parimutually, they tend to donate to our charities over at our page there, trfinc.org/players. So feel free to put any tips forward, Marshall, either for today or if there's anything you're excited about betting on this loaded card tomorrow.
No, nothing jumps out at me. I've been kind of playing race by race. This is it's weird to think of this as a kid's holiday, being out of school, given they've effectively been at home for a month. But it's it's a holiday for the kids, so I've been going race to race in between messing around with them all day. So no, nothing jumps out. But again, the racing has been great, and they've got 156 horses entered for tomorrow. A couple big stakes races, and they'll handle 10 to 12 million. So it is, in some ways, if you want to look at the bright side of this, the less is more, right? And we're getting big, exciting fields, competitive racing, and that's the upside of it. I mean, there's huge downsides, but the upside is the racing has been fun. I sort of really look forward to weekend racing at Oaklawn and the major circuits, and then hell, I even dabble at Will Rogers. So.
It is interesting some of the third order effects of all this. The industry seeing in such concrete terms the potential benefits of coordination / consolidation. Do you think that we'll see a sea change in the way horse racing in the USA is conducted as a result of what's been going on in the country over the last few weeks, Marshall?
Well, I'll tell you what it's frustrating is it doesn't seem like Tampa and Oaklawn and Gulfstream are coordinating their post time. So you have 3 tracks running. You have 2 tracks in the Fox Sports Show, right? And they're still running fairly close to one another. So I just, it makes me concerned that there's sort of nothing learned from here, right? I mean, if I were anything in terms of setting up these races, I would try to set up my races so they're not on top of one another. They could run races quicker. There's no reason to have 30 minutes between races. They could run it at off times, right? So Gulfstream can end and Oaklawn could have a big part of their card afterwards. So, I would have hoped we'd see more experimentation. At least thus far, I haven't seen it, but I'm just glad we're racing. I mean, I do think, again, people will look at it. People will look at some of the handle numbers. Maybe some improvements will happen, but I don't know. Look, I mean, I'm trying to make a good situation out of a bad one, and at least we have good full fields.
I know you have a question for Marshall, but I want to just button up that comment before I leave it open for you by saying, I've been we talked before you came on the call, Marshall, about how I'm in a new role in my life here now, being a school teacher. And I would say that if I were to give racing executives, if you put me in charge of teaching racing executives, I'd be handing out plenty of timeouts. Let's say it that way. JK, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I thought Marshall did a phenomenal deep dive into a topic that I think that's on everyone's mind lately, especially with what racing experienced a month and a half, 2 months ago. And Marshall, you pulled some stats up and posted them about Steve Asmussen about the cold streak, and I think that it's really important. I thought you dug up some things that answered a lot of questions for me, because I'd kind of seen he was on a cold streak, and I was wondering why all of a sudden was it cold. And I think that the cold streak wasn't nearly as bad as we thought it could have been. And I wanted you to just kind of elaborate on what you found.
Well, I mean, I was so earlier in the year, right around NHC time, Robertino Diodoro got really hot at Oaklawn. And so I did a deep dive into his stats, and all his horses at that point they were jumping off the page. And so, a bunch of them were improving by 10 points, and they were all improving. So, my thought was, let's look at what's happened to Asmussen. He was 1 for 48 over the last 2 weekends, had lost 43 straight. I threw the one winner in there because it was on a Thursday of last week. So you put all those together, he was 1 for 48. And, I worked under the assumption that they had just gone really cold for whatever reason, right? Don't want to necessarily cast, I don't want to necessarily make any accusations, but I assumed that they'd just gone cold, and my expectations were all of his horses were regressing. And so in doing the deep dive, I looked at the 48 horses. 2 of them were firsters, so you throw them out. But of the 46 horses that he had run back, 20 of them improved on their Beyer Speed Figures, and 9 of them improved by double digits. And so for whatever reason, for whatever reason, it looks like he was just unlucky, right? So, he had 9 second place finishes in his 48 starts. And so, I concluded from that is, instead of not betting him, I was going to bet him enthusiastically, right? So, I was more thinking about it from a handicapping perspective. Hey, this guy looks like it's just running bad luck. Part of it, and y'all talked about this on the podcast. I did listen to y'all's podcast that y'all all have already posted. The Naira Bets one is that Oaklawn racing has got a lot tougher. A lot of people are shipping in from different tracks. Owners are aggressively dropping their stock. A horse that was worth 25 last month is now worth 12.5. And so the racing has gotten more competitive. The fields have gotten fuller. He was without his, his main go-to jockey, Ricardo Santana, for a while. So I think all those put together more likely contributed to this run than anything else, right? And so he came back yesterday. I bet on him when he finished up the track, and then in the eighth when he finally got off the short-term duck, I was actually against him in that race. So he did win the late double, and even though I'm prone to be on him, I bet him wrongly yesterday.
I want to return to an aspect of this, and it's to me a very smart way of looking at trainer stats through the lens, not just of win percentage, not just of in the money percentage, but of what happens to horses' figures. But we've got 0 minutes at Gulfstream for race number 5, and I want to bring Matt Bernier back in to give his.
I don't know if I lost Pete. Maybe I'm the only one that can't hear him, but we'll go.
No, you're there. You're there, Matt. I don't hear him either. I don't hear him either, but you're there.
Yeah, we'll go on with it then. Look, I don't know. It's one of those races where I went through, and I can understand the logic for using a horse like So Charming, who got through the N2L ranks most recently. Now is going to be moving up in class slightly to the N3L. The Joseph barn continues to cook along. So again, horse makes sense. I don't know if there's a ton of speed in the race, and that probably compromises the chances of the horse that I liked a little bit. I think Fantastic Kingdom is a little bit dirtied up as far as the 2 most recent runs are concerned. The run 2 starts back. Yes, there was pace to run at, but I don't know that necessarily just played out the way that would have been conducive to this 4-year-old filly. The most recent run, yes, it was a blanket finish. There were about 6 of them across the wire altogether, but she was stopped a little bit in deep stretch, and I thought she was really kicking on at the end. For me, I always look for horses that have some finish, regardless of the class level. I understand lower levels with the condition claimers. Typically, horses don't like to pass one another. She's not the case. She's a horse that has something as far as finish is concerned. I'm hopeful the pace is a little bit swifter than maybe it looks at face value, and she gets something to run at. And I figured she'd be a decent price. 7-1, I think, is fair. So I went with the 3, Fantastic Kingdom.
Marshall, how about you? What did you come up with here?
I went with the Mary Epler horse. Again, looking again at the standings, I realize now that if it's 209 entries and to finish in the top 20, you need $64. So, sort of dead in the water, but I went with the Epler horse, hoping to be, on or near the lead and get the good trip from the inside. I guess.
JK?
My favorite angle in racing is closing into a slow pace. I'm with Matt, Fantastic Kingdom. The pace here is a little bit of a concern, but the drop from 25 to 16 and Fantastic Kingdom had trouble in the last race. So it wasn't that it was closing into a slow pace, had trouble, probably could have and should have won. That's who I landed on here.
Let's go back, Marshall, to that point you were making about looking at trainer stats through the lens of figure improvement. How do you do that work physically? Are you exporting data from a program like Stats Race Lens or Formulator? Like if folks are interested in that idea, what sort of leads could you give them on how they might be able to do it better, more efficiently, or even just to get involved in the first place?
Well, I wish there was something fancy I did, but I went to Ecobase, pulled up his last, basically cut and paste that information to Excel, grabbed only the Oaklawn starters. I used Formulator to, take his last 2 weeks of horses, and I looked at their PP. So I just did this by hand, right? I figured that was the easiest. I mean, I'm sure that Stats Race Lens is the kind of tool to work with, but I kind of wanted to look at Beyer figures and And so that's, that's how I did the research. Easy enough to do by hand, this one. And obviously doing anything more complicated would involve a stronger tool like Stats Race Lens. But the Beyer is something that everyone can identify with. And so I figured that was at least the way to take a look.
I just feel like with a lot of these things, I mean, well, let me ask it this way. What stats in particular are you more interested in? Actually, it looks like they're about to pop at Gulfstream. So we'll do this race and then we'll keep you around, Marshall, to answer this next question. But Matt, you've been doing an excellent job talking us through.
Going into the first turn here, you got a couple horses out there. Feature Creature La Incondicional is sitting in the pocket right now, a little bit eager, but nothing too crazy. You've got Teacher Drama on the outside, 70-1 or 60-1. The pace looks reasonable. I mean, 23 and a piece, 23 and 4, a shade under 24 seconds. So given the way the turf has been playing down there, this seems like a pretty reasonable number. If you're a fan of the 6 out there, you're clear by a length and 3/4. Which I don't know necessarily bodes well for Jonathan and I. Our horses got some kick no matter what, and they cooked. They turned it up a little bit there in that second quarter, 47-2. But it's been a relatively uncontested pace. Now I have to be honest. I don't know offhand what the 6 looks like. I can pull up the PPs, but this is one of those races where I would expect the horses that are forwardly placed to continue on with some sort of energy. And at this point, it looks like everybody is in deep water, even though the 3/4 mark says 10-4. You've got the 7-5 favorite rolling up on the outside, changes leads, should go on by rather comfortably. The 1 down on the inside is trying to make a bit of a run for second, but not going to do so. It looks like a 26 exact. I'll be surprised if the 1 gets up there. So 2-6 geared down, makes 7-5 look like easy money, according to Pete Ayala.
I love the easy money call. I'm a huge fan of that one. And great news if you're doing well, right? I mean, at this point, they're rooting for the horse that they have, and they're rooting for chalk. So a little 26 will be music to their ears. Marshall, while we have you, we're going to let you go soon and get on with your life. But I did want to ask. I'm very interested in this idea of when looking at figure improvement or lack thereof is more of an important tool than looking at win percentage for you when you're evaluating trainer stats. Talk about that for a minute, if you'd be so kind.
I just think that, the trainer stats themselves could have some hidden stuff like the Asmussen example. So, I think the trainer stats and the odds are a place to start, right? If horses aren't, if you're sort of first picking up on trainers struggling and they're running poorly relative to their odds, and the trainer's not winning as much as you'd projected, and has low odds horses that are running poorly and aren't hitting the board. I think that's one thing, and then backing it up by regression in the speed figures, I think is just as important. So I think ultimately what you're trying to do is pick up on these changes before the public does, or maybe catch the situation where the public is overreacting. So, my thought with Asmussen is that hopefully everyone sees this. He's 0 for 43, 1 for 48, and they slow down betting his horses. Now, the reality is Asmussen just gets bet at Oaklawn, so it doesn't matter, right? And so oftentimes it takes more subtle changes to less high-profile trainers. So, but that's kind of my thought. I don't weight one more than the other. I think the starting point is the percentage starts to fall, and then trying to dig in why that's the case.
One area for me where I feel like that would be particularly useful is first start to second start, first layoff to second layoff. If those stats were readily available, what happens to the figures? I feel like that would tell so much more of a relevant tale than win percentage or ROI that I think would maybe cloud some of that. Is that, do you think, potentially, Marshall, an interesting area for exploration?
No, I agree. But, the other part of it that's tricky is you have 46 starts. And in some cases, I think there were 2 of the, at least one of them where the horse was either coming off a race where the horse sort of didn't finish, or the horse didn't finish in the race. You have situations where a horse runs a -0 right? And
You have
then
to
and then runs a
correct for that.
75.
Yeah.
So,
You probably
really
have to leave that out, right?
Yeah, correcting for that. So, yeah, and that involves somewhat of a judgment call, right, in terms of how you do it. But I do think that I do think everything you're saying is correct, and I think that sort of even coming back to this at a later point, being able to say, do we classify this as a period of time where Assison was cold or not? I don't know, because I've always liked horses that ran well when the trainer was running poorly, right? And then vice versa, I tend to avoid horses that didn't run well when the trainer was going hot, right? So do we then come back and say, here's a period where Assison was cold, or here's a period where the stats may sort of lie? I don't know the answer to that, right? I have to think about how to want to classify this as we think about this stretch going forward, right? And Assison is the rare guy who is able to make 48 starts in a 2-week time frame, right? And so when we think about this is not just Assison is not really one trainer, right? He's got horses at all sorts of different tracks, the Fairgrounds, Houston, and Oaklawn. And so these horses that are coming in and racing over the past couple of weeks, they're coming from 3 different circuits, right? So they may have been overseen by 3 of his different assistants, right? So one situation, the horses may be in good shape and well, the others they may not be, right? So that I find, again, they're tricky things to evaluate, from a handicapping perspective, and then going forward.
Let's bring in the panel to talk about this, and then I'm going to ask you one ownership question, Marshall. We'll get a quick thought on this Tampa race, and we'll let you get out of here. But JK, when you hear Marshall talk about the Asmussen streak in general, the concept of looking at trainer stats through the lens of figure improvement, what thoughts are going through your head as a horse player?
Yeah, I mean, I had the same idea. I saw the article on DRF, and I think it's a topic we'll probably address on the Fox show. And I think Steve Asmussen is one of the greatest trainers in the country and of all time. He's good with claimers, with fillies, with long, short. He probably doesn't excel in turf, but he'll win a turf race on you. And so I'm going to keep playing him. I think it's circumstantial. I think that like we talked about on the show yesterday, lots of horses dropping aggressively, lots of horses shipping, big full field, so more opportunities for bad trips. Just a whole shakeup in his entire operation. He's probably running horses at Oaklawn that he would be running elsewhere, but he can't be running them elsewhere, so now he's got to run them there. I mean, there's a lot of reasons I think that it's happened. So, but I agree. I've always wanted to see. I don't care what your percentage is adding blinkers. It doesn't really matter to me. I think it's a very cloudy stat. I want to know what your average figure improvement is when you add blinkers. And I'm not tech savvy enough to do it, and I haven't convinced anyone who is to do it for me.
Let's talk about this Tampa race really quick, because I do see there's that's coming up really quick. And Matt, feel free if you want to feather in any comments on what the crew has been talking about to your remarks. But we'll start with you, Matt. What are you doing here at Tampa? What can folks be doing to play along at home?
Yeah, I mean, look, not a race that I really loved anything in here. I found it interesting. There's a few horses that are eligible for the non-winners of 2 lifetime condition that are running N3L here this afternoon. Maybe that horse will win. I just, for the life of me, I'll never understand why. And maybe the condition book didn't come up with one of those races. Why would you put a horse in a much more difficult spot? Clearly, the horse needs some help. I ended up going with the 9 in here. I'm not thrilled with the horse by any stretch of the imagination, but got through the N2L rank most recently. That was first time out for the new barn. Was kind of hard ridden, probably just inside the half-mile pole, but persevered and eventually once tipped out into the clear finished quite well. Again, I recognize it was against cheaper horses, but the runner-up came back and earned a 49 next out. That at least makes me think that 50, and perhaps it's even a little bit on the lower side or the lighter side for a spot like this. Maybe we could be looking at potentially a forward move into a mid-50. I think that's at least ballparking good enough to win in a spot like this. 4-1. I don't love the price. I wouldn't bet the horse to win. From an 8-1 morning line, I was hopeful to get somewhere in that 6-8-1 range, but that's where I landed the 9.
JK, real quick thought on this one.
Yeah, Matt's not practicing social distancing. He's looking over my shoulder. I picked 9 as well. Same reasons.
Marshall.
I picked the 7, consistently sort of mediocre sort to may just get the right trip, and get an 8-1, and so that's not a bad price. So that's with the 7 Lolanita.
All right, so there are our thoughts on this race at Tampa. Horses they're circling a little bit. Maybe we do have another second here. And Marshall, we'll end our time with you just talking about some of the challenges of being an owner at this time. We had Gary Fenton on the In the Ring pod talking about it. We've touched on it here a little bit, but what's the latest with 10 Strike during this difficult time?
Well, we're very lucky. We have a lot of horses at Oaklawn. We have a lot of trainers at Oaklawn, so we're able to bring our horses there that are able to run. So that's been that's really worked out. We've won races and pursed enough money that I think that we can sort of move along if racetracks remain closed. We do have 15 horses in the Northeast right now, a dozen or so at Parks, Laurel, and Belmont. And so, if they can open one track up there, we'll be running at that track. But, we still seem a while away from running races up there. I've given a few horses away that were cheaper, but they were ready to win, but they aren't, 2 months of bills makes it not worth holding them. So I gave a few horses away. We're trying to bring in babies maybe a little bit earlier to keep, we'd like to see our trainers be able to keep their entire staffs, right? To keep their exercise rider, to keep their grooms, to keep some stability in terms of what they're doing, and bring our turf horses back. And so in many ways, it comes at a good time that we can bring turf horses back and bring in babies so that there's not as much disruption. And really, for the last couple weeks at Oaklawn, we're just going to run very aggressively, try to win races.
What are you hearing about the tracks in the Northeast, Marshall? JK and I kind of disagreed. I thought there was a chance we could see behind closed doors racing in New York in May. JK seems skeptical about it. What would you guess?
I don't know anything more than either of y'all. I think that, I would think that sort of the news out of Belmont is going to make it really hard for them to restart soon, but really it just takes one track. If Delaware could open or Laurel could open, I think it's a track working with the governor, working with the state, setting up the right protocols. Oaklawn has been able to do it successfully. And when they're doing $8 to $10 million in handle with their hold, they're doing well. They're making money on their product, making money above purses. I don't know the exact details of it, right? But they're doing well enough to merit racing. And I think that, especially in the environment where a lot of tracks aren't racing, hopefully one track decides to take the chance. And I think with the right protocols, it can be done correctly.
All right,
Pete,
we're going to let
they're about to break, but hold on, watch this.
What you got?
They're about to break. Hold on. Get some mimosa time.
Oh, my God. It's getting real over there. Not just for morning anymore. So, Marshall, we're going to let you go, and we're going to bring it to our resident race caller, Matt Bernier, to talk us through this 7th race at Tampa Bay. Marshall, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you, Marshall. The 11 is cleared off to the top at 10-1 right now. The 4 at 42-1 is breathing fire down his neck. We're going into the far turn. Opening quarter up in 22-3. The 7 at 4-1 right now. The 7 is who? The 7 is Lolanita. This is Marshall's horse, looking quite good on the far outside right now. 6 is following the 7 along. The 11 is packed it in. Half mile, probably going to be in 45 and change. High 45s, I would imagine. Waiting for some sort of a fraction to pop up here. But the 4 at 42-1 still is cooking along on the front end. I was way off on the half mile. It was under 47 seconds. And it looks like Lolanita is going to go on by and get this thing done rather professionally at 4-1. Real race is going to be for second. It looks like you're going to get a 9-1 chance in second to overtake that 42-1 pace setter. That's right. So 7-6 for your exacta.
7-6 at Tampa Bay. And
so 4-1 over 9-1 ballpark.
Hopefully we got some folks out there cashing on that with any luck at all. And
I also, by the way, Pete, I heard back. I texted both Lee and Baychak.
Oh, let's hear it.
And the response, I sent it to both of them at the same time in the little group chat. I said, we're doing the live stream. What was the logic for the 6 at Tampa? Mike Baychak. And only the way that Mike Baychak can respond. Handicapping brilliance. He gave no other No other explanation.
So he picked the number. He picked the number. That's what I will
Lee
read from
said Lee's logic was there was zero speed in the race, so I was just looking for something that would be close to the pace. Had no idea that the horse would be 70-1. He said in retrospect, the 8 horse was the real speed. So I understand the logic of at least looking for a horse that can be close to the pace in a race where there seemingly isn't any. So at least that was, again, I wouldn't have ever come up with the horse, but hearing, that's all I ever look for, by the way, is if you pick a horse that to me looks just foreign on paper, I don't care that you had though. I'm just curious what was the logic behind it. So when I hear that from someone, I totally get it. I mean, I'm fine with that. But as opposed to somebody just saying, "Oh, I like the 4." Well, why? And no real. And I get it that Baychok's being a little bit coy. He's playing a little bit tight to the vest. But
I think it means he picked the number. I really do. That to me
I'm not going to say that.
Weak is strong. Strong is weak.
I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, and that type of red boarding, we used to have a whole show on our network, JK, devoted to looking back at winners like that and how they came. Whatever happened to that guy?
The internet, I guess. I tell you what, Baychok would not have had that horse if we would have had a table bet today, because he can't pick winners when we have a table bet.
This is a good excuse for me to go get a drink.
I like it when JK starts bragging about the table bet.
No, I like poking at friends who just have to sit there and text me that they're mad.
Oh, I love it. All right, how about our new leader? We need to institute a prize, JK, for these contests. We have to give something to the winner. Obviously in real life, it's wonderful that we have this flat prize structure of the top 21 winning the same thing, but to make the broadcast more fun, it would be cool to have some sort of added value to the winner. And Hunter Archibald has taken the lead with a total of $89 after that race. Curtis Meyer second. Sam Stin. All right, we'll continue.
I want to know if Craig has a sleeveless shirt on again this week like he did last week.
Oh, come on now.
No, seriously, he's optional. There he is.
Oh, look at the gun.
Guns out, baby. Guns out.
DJ Unstable himself. Rocking the
it was
shirts.
perfect.
He's somehow finding a way to work out during all this madness.
Flex on him.
I don't know how he does it. That was good. It was very
Hulk that was good.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that the moment of the whole thing? That's
the highlight of the 3 broadcasts so far is
come on now.
The DJ Unstable Hogan routine. And that's Hulk Hogan, in case I needed to clarify. Gentlemen, so let's talk about what happens next. We are looking at our 5th of the 6 races in this contest. Do either of you have a chance to get up in the number? Did either of you play horses long enough to potentially do anything, or are we're JK, I'm going to imagine you are straight up drawing dead. Am I correct?
Well, that's rude, but I am in 200 and 201st place out of 209. So you don't know what I have. So take it easy, big fella.
Well, let us know. Do you have some, 20 to 1? Do you have a cap horse here to get you in the mix?
No, I mean, I played the 2 here. There's a 3 to 5 morning line. So I guess I don't have the board in front of me, but I think the 2 is probably an all right price, huh?
You were looking at 6 to 1.
Yeah, so I have the 2 here, and then I used 2 horses that were like 6 to 1, 8 to 1 morning line the next. So probably not, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, right now, 21st is, but it's only 21st is 33, and then 20th goes up to 64. How about you, Matt? Any shot to get in the mix?
No, this is one where I'm just going to sit back and for morale's sake, try to hopefully catch a couple of winners here at the end, but recognize that this little run here, this is over. There's no chance in this spot. And that's the difficult part about, I get the pros and cons of all the different formats, but in a format like this, I'm genuinely just sitting on my hands saying, all right, well, this one's done. And frankly, realistically, I could have said that after that, the giant price came in the first race. There are pros and cons to all the different formats. It's the thing we spoke about last week when I said people like to complain just to complain. You're going to find people that love this format. You're going to find people that hate it because they have no chance after, 2 cap horses come through. So pick your poison. It is what it is. You know the rules when you sign up for these things.
I hear a rumor that our guest might actually be able to hear us now. Is that true, Nick Tammaro? Now, this is ironic because you're moving your lips so I can see that you can hear me, but now we can't hear you, Craig. If there's any way we can sort that out. But it's good to see you, Nick. You can do the show in mime potentially. I don't know how
Pete,
your American Sign Language is. Yes, JK.
I got a non-boomer tip. We can go, boss man. If you can hear me, right next to your picture in the top right corner, if you hit that settings button, make sure that your microphone is on your AirPods because it looks like you have your AirPods in.
Oh, good stuff. And did it work? I think
Did that
it
make a
worked.
difference?
Yes, it did.
Oh,
I made all the difference.
I don't even have AirPods in, so it was just and I'm not going to take offense to being referred to as a boomer, and I am trolling all of you with an Astros World Series.
Oh no, I was calling Pete the boomer, not you.
Oh, okay.
You're younger than I am.
Right.
I like you've got your beard rocking. It's looking well. How are you dealing with everything you're dealing with? A new father in this crazy time in the world we're dealing with. You holding up okay?
Yeah, I'll take the assist as far as getting to spend a little more time with the little lady. That's been fun, but it's survival at times. But yeah, I'm enjoying it.
How
I don't
active
have I joked with Craig before, like a nice room with a bunch of books or something. I mean, I essentially am in like a padded room. There's nothing behind me. I don't want anybody to think that I live like any kind of king. So my wife might disagree, but I'll just take my lumps.
Fantastic. A lot of horse players could use a rubber room, not just these days, but in general, this crazy pursuit that we have. How active have you been able to be playing horses these days? Have you been getting down at Will Rogers and Fawner with the rest of us?
Some days more so than I should be. Some days not as much, not enough, but enough to keep me busy. You got extra free time. So I actually like Gulfstream and Oaklawn as two of my non-Naira signals for the winter. So it's been fun, and the racing at Gulfstream, I think prior to this week's been pretty good. It's starting to look a little dreary in terms of actual turf races and things like that. But Oaklawn's been great, and that card tomorrow just looks outstanding.
You had something, JK?
Yeah. How about this beard? This boss beard.
I commented on it right away.
I love this.
Really? I haven't seen all you guys in person in a long time. I've had it for I've had it for like 6 or 8 months now. So
is that right? This is what happens when you miss the NHC, Nick. We don't get our dose.
Well, and this is like a beard only broadcast. So I knew I had to. I mean, even if I.
Well, I was going to say. I mean, next week if we do it again, I'm probably going to need to shave.
Yeah. Well,
we can't have everybody just follow it.
X, so I had to grow a beard, and here it is.
It could become a fashion trend. I think grooming is kind of out the window these days, so it wouldn't shock me. But I'm glad to hear you're keeping busy. I want to talk to you. We got 2 minutes at Gulfstream, which probably means 6. So why don't we run through these? We'll run through this race a little bit early, so folks have time to get their bets in. And we'll start with you, Nick. Did you end up playing in this contest, or are you just joining us here to say hello?
I did not. I'm joining to say hello and participate. And if you certainly do it next week, I'll get involved a little bit more. I didn't have enough time quite to look at the whole thing, but I did take a peek at the Gulfstream race and some of the Tampa races, so we can certainly chat.
Right? Yeah. Hit us with your thoughts on this one at Gulfstream coming up. We've got a 6-5 favorite. Are you with or against?
I mean, this is one of the challenges of dealing with Safi Joseph and some of the high percentage trainers down at Gulfstream. You're trying to figure whether you're going to take this. I mean, I think in a pick and pray type format, you're going to be hard pressed to take a horse that is going to be a really short price. This horse actually isn't even all the way down to his morning line. No morning line jokes about Gulfstream coming from me. But this is a situation where he looked like he'd be a pretty short price. You'd probably want to stay away in terms of a contest and looking at it in that setting. But the alternatives really aren't vast. I thought that maybe from a price perspective, there were a couple of horses that could make up ground if the 5 and 2 pushed the 1 a little bit, and I thought maybe the 6 with Paco was one that you could look at from a pick and pray contest format. But of course, that horse was 10-1 on the morning line, and now looks like the second choice. Paco being back in the colony probably will help keep things a little more honest, as Gaffalione and Saez were pretty much dominating the last few cards, and I think Paco's already had at least 1 win today, so. It's good to see him back, and I think his style fits perfectly with this horse in that he'll sit just a little bit off the pace and probably be ready to pounce.
JK, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of against the horse take charge dude on the inside just because I thought he was going to be really short in this format. Coming off a break and then dropping and the rail. I ended up landing on the 2 Travie Boy. Not encouraged by the trainer's stats. He's 0 for 25 at the meet, 0 for 19 in 2020. But he's got some tactical speed. He could sit right off of take charge dude if take charge dude goes and then ends up getting that 2-3 wide trip. So that's where I landed. I don't feel like it's the greatest opinion in the history of horse racing, but that's where I'm at.
Matt Bernier, anything clever for you in this 6th race at Gulfstream on this Friday afternoon? Good Friday afternoon at that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say clever. I went with the 6 Killa D as well, just with the idea that I understand we're looking at a horse that probably needs to improve a little bit from a numbers standpoint, but I didn't really understand the fascination with the inside horse. And again, you don't know what you're going to get here with the Joseph Barn off this sort of layoff. Yes, the horses run fast in the past, but I don't know that there's any giant edge on the rest of this field that deserved to be 3 to 5 in the morning line. But if you're looking at some of the, will pays and things of that nature, this one should tick down a little bit from here. I'd imagine you're going to be looking at 4 to 5 at least when it's said and done. But, I thought some of the other horses that seemingly made sense, Jersey Joe B, he's not necessarily a horse that makes sense, but he's a horse that's going to be forwardly placed. The only way he's ever won is outright on the lead. You got to go with him. Don't think twice about it. I think some of the other horses, Travie Boy, I think he's at his best when he's out there cutting out the fractions. And if he's going to do that, I think he's going to have to go too fast, even though this is a shorter distance. So, look, again, I went with Killa D. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole at 7-2, but he's just kind of where I landed here.
From a wagering point of view, Nick, is this a race you're going to be playing or just one, you're happy to offer an opinion on?
Yeah, I think this is just a scenario where maybe you're trying to start the Big Five or
right.
Just what's up, Austin?
Hi.
Hey, Austin!
I had a beard? I had it when we were at Del Mar last year.
I had to let you see PTF, bud.
What's going on, buddy? Perrin says hello.
Nothing. I'm just playing a game.
Hey, tell him what horse you like in this race in the 8th.
Give us a number between 1 and 7.
1 and 7.
5.
All right, bud. Love you.
Wow, 25 to 1 shot, reaching for the capper. Apparently the apple does fall far from the tree, Jake.
I was just going to say that.
Race to the punchline. It happens sometimes. Great to see that smiling face. Who knows? Maybe if absolutely everything breaks right, JK, he and Perrin can be doing the Saratoga Ninja Lab camp together come the last 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. But in any case, it's good. It's very good to see him. Nick, how has your work been affected by this? Are you able to work from home? Are you still are any of your tracks you were doing buyers for involved in that, or have you had to hit pause?
Yeah, I am buyerless at this point. Golden Gate was my last spot. Sam Houston ended prematurely, so I'm waiting on, like the rest of the world, waiting on some of the April openings that I would have worked on. Finger Lakes, which I imagine is a long way, hopefully, if at all, and Lone Star. So hopefully those get going. Lone Star, I think, maybe get going in May. It's difficult to predict because, Lone Star is a place that really relies heavily on on-track business. And so I don't really think they're going to be in a big rush to go out of their way to open behind closed doors. I don't think running behind closed doors would be as much of a problem for Finger Lakes, but I don't think they're going to run unless their casino opens. So it's difficult. As far as day job, yes, I can telework. I've been doing that now for, I think this is the 4th week. Gone into the office just a couple of times, but that's mainly operating on kind of a skeleton crew. So hanging in there and can't complain. I don't try not to leave much. It seems to be a lot safer at home. So
no doubt.
And with a 5-month-old, you want to be careful about how much you're exposing yourself to anything that you shouldn't.
100% right. And it's an interesting phase to get to be around more. I mean, we'll all, JK and I, any other parent will tell you how fast it goes. And it is, we've talked a bunch about how, you hesitate to talk about silver linings per se, but there are some things about this time that you can look to as just in the abstract on a day-to-day basis as positives, and getting to be around our kids more. That's a beautiful thing in its own weird way, even if it's not the way we would have chosen it. I have a baseball question for you. I know, Nick, you're a big baseball fan. Matt will bring you on this one. JK, you can go get another mimosa.
That looked like a Hefeweizen.
Have you heard these rumors
Okay. Yeah.
about potentially doing baseball in the spring training facilities and radically realigning along the lines of where the spring training teams are located? Curious if either of you heard these rumors and what you think about them as baseball fans. The really bad news, Nick, is the Mets and the Astros could end up in the same division. But we'll start with you. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, I read about it this morning, and I mean, it seems to make sense given that attendance can be limited, if not excluded altogether, and you still can have kind of a league. I mean, it'd be an interesting grouping of teams playing under presumably, I guess, AL rules. That was not. I didn't read that, but I'm a total convert to AL rules. By the way, I really did not want to be when the Astros moved to the AL. I do like the DH, and when we play interleague games, it's like, oh God, what the hell are they doing sending the pitcher up there? But yeah, I mean, it would be fun. It would also make for some really good baseball. I mean, you have obviously the Red Sox and the Phillies and the Yankees and Mets and Cardinals, Astros, Nationals. Astros and Nationals share a park. The Marlins are there as well, so there's be somebody to beat up on. But yeah, I think it would be. Look, I'd like to see baseball back. I think operating under the normal set of circumstances is impossible. So if the choices are 2020 in the grapefruit and cactus leagues or nothing, then I'll definitely take the grapefruit and cactus leagues.
All right, we are off for race 6 at Gulfstream. Matt, you've been doing a fine job talking us through these, so we'll send it to you.
Yeah, I mean, look, Paco's doing what Paco always does, looks under his shoulder about 15 times, just ride the horse. For some reason, the horse broke on top. I expected this horse to be coming from 2 or 3 off of it. The 2, Travie Boy, is trying to run down the 6, and I think is probably going to do so. And even down on the inside, the 1's going to come back and get the place. So 2-6-1, 2-1-6 is going to be the final order of finish. I kind of looked at it the way that Nick did, where I expected this horse to be sitting just in behind, but broke on top. I don't want to sit here and bash a rider for using speed to his advantage and just go on with it, but I also didn't necessarily envision the trip playing out this way, and disappointing the horse couldn't even hang on for second. So 2 with Jonathan's horse, Travie Boy. The 1 who, whether you think it was a good favorite at 4-5 or not, finishes second, and the 6 runs third.
I don't feel bad doing this because we've essentially started a campaign for Paco to run against Donald Trump in 2000, the next election. So I don't feel bad saying, but I don't understand why he always wants to do this.
Look, I've been screaming. To me, it's the same thing. And Pete and Nick, who watch baseball and presumably played baseball growing up, I'll never ever understand when you play or you coach. You put the ball in play, obviously not necessarily a fly ball to the outfield. You put the ball on the ground. You run through first base. You don't look and see what's happening out at shortstop or out at third or wherever you've hit the ball. You just run because, in theory, your quickest way to get the job done is to just run straight through the bag and peel off into foul territory. Instead, when you keep doing one of these, you're kind of hindering yourself. And I don't like to dump on riders at all. This is one where I won't have any problem sitting there saying, stop looking under your shoulder and just ride. The wire's in front of you, not behind you. I don't care if they're running. Just go. Point blank.
It's a good question, JK, for you to ask Gary Stevens on an upcoming broadcast. My assumption is sometimes when you're looking at, say, a top-class 3-year-old and they do that, they're presumably trying to understand, leave something in the tank, that whole idea. When you're dealing with a cheaper level race, I've never understood it for a minute. But I think you should consider adding that to your list of questions, whether it's when you sit down with Gary and do an hour-long podcast on the network or on air. What do you think he'd say?
Off air or on air? It depends. I don't know. I wasn't fortunate enough to watch a lot of Gary's career, so I don't know how much he was a looker-arounder type. He doesn't strike me as a looker-arounder type. He feels like he went, and if you came up next to him, he'd tighten you up a little bit, and that's what my assumption would be. Nick, I know you watched a lot more Gary Stevens races than I did.
Yeah, he was. I mean, there was no wasted motion. I can tell you that. He was very astute when it came to anything. I mean, you think about a guy whose best rides in his career were, commentator in the Whitney, going to the lead, and Victory Gallop in the Belmont, coming from way off of it. Being able to do both of those things shows just an immense amount of talent. And I don't think he wasted any time looking back to see what was coming. He was concerned with what was in front of him. So, I'll say that I think with different riders, it also changed. It changes a little bit. Manny Franco took a big look back on Tiz the Law in the Florida Derby just inside the quarter pole, and that kind of made me confident that he thought he had a lot under him. So that's a circumstance, I think, where you don't see him do that a whole heck of a lot. The Paco conversation to me is really funny in that I don't understand it. I don't understand how he wins so much. I think he's absolutely atrocious on horseback. I think some of his whip action and stuff at times is just psychotic. I've been told by people that he reminds them a lot of Jorge Chavez, and I kind of took offense to that because I love Jorge Chavez. Awful on horseback. That was because he was, so it wasn't exactly because of anything
aggressive.
But yeah, super aggressive, super, active with the whip, obviously, and sometimes a little prone to questionable decisions. So they have a lot of similarities in that respect.
All right, looks like we have a new leaderboard. I'm not sure if I'm fully back here yet or not, but I'll go ahead and take the lead. Tony Joe leaping into first place with 91.
Oh, wow. Look at this special guest.
Look at this. Austin's not going to be the only one to join in.
Oh, who do we got?
So everybody, Alessandra's going to be making picks
The
soon.
little boss.
See,
The little boss.
Wave
Oh,
hi.
beautiful. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, we're trying to teach her the racing form. It'll be right after crawling and things like that. So,
Well, if you're
I have
High/out
a
Beyer.
picture of parent at that age with the form in hand. I think it's upside down, but we were trying.
if Nick is anything like his dad, she'll be knee deep in trifectas in no time.
that's right. I have to make sure that gambling gene's there.
That's day making stuff, Nick. Thank you for that. Great.
Absolutely.
Oh, fabulous. Let's go back to this leaderboard for a minute. We'll just run them down. We got the first 21 winning into tomorrow's BC qualifier. Of course, folks can head over to horseplayers.com and put up $1.79 to win into that BC. Right there with the greatest horse racing contests that have been done. Tony Joe, our new leader. Brian Ivory in second. Hunter Archibald, Curtis Meyer, Sam Stinson, Nick Hemmingson, Justin Dew, Chris Couples, Mike Boreale, Billy Moore, Drew Coatney, Steve Dudenoth, Michael Bailey, Robert Matthews, Michael Bailey again, Gary Wright, Dylan Donnelly, who'll be, I think, on the show next week if we can arrange it, Michael Webb, Rick Broth, the former KDBC winner, John Gasper, and right now we've got the tie. Wow, this is great. A tie for 21st, Ben Burkett, but also Steve Wolfson Sr.
texted me and said there's something coming to our door.
Who's got Steve Wolfson Sr., legendary contest player and owner, Harborview Farm in the house. Little affirmed action being represented on the current leaderboard
At some point.
So we got a lot going on there. JK,
BTF, I'll say this. BTF, real quick. I got a message from Hunter Archibald, who's doing really well in the contest. Not only did he use the 8 in Tampa 6 and the 7 in Tampa 7, he hit a $20 double as well.
Nice.
He paid like $200.
That's fantastic. So he's making money on the day no matter what. That's great stuff. And he'll obviously be participating tomorrow. You got to coach him along, JK, to getting into the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Give us a quick word for you, JK, as a player, and then Nick, I'll hit you with everybody with this question about what makes the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge such a great contest.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the best part about it is that's where Nikki and the boss and I fell in love, right, boss? That was the first time we hung out proper.
6 years strong.
And Pete, me and you too, right? That's the first time we
met at Belmont that year, but we hung out proper at City to BCBC.
I mean, I love it because obviously it's the best racing. It's for big money. You don't have a 10 claimer mixed into a $10,000 live bankroll contest. It's championship races. It's back-to-back excitement with years of stories. And ideas that lead you into horses and that are grade 1 animals that go off at 12-1. And so
That's
without
well
a doubt,
put.
to me, it's my favorite contest.
Let's interrupt here. They're about to go in at Tampa. Let's give a quick thought on this, JK. We'll keep it with you. Or was that a mistake? Nick, we'll throw it to you. What do you like here?
I didn't have a particularly clever opinion. I thought the horse they're actually making right now looked good. It was not something that I'm kind of a sporadic Tampa player, and I'm probably a little too impatient at times for some of these lower level races than I need to be. Now everybody thinking, yeah, you're on Big Show and talked about Fawner, so who the hell do you think you are? But I thought Charmer ran well last time, was close to the pace and stayed on. I love I'm a big slut for the red time form US running lines and blue ones and playing the ones that were against those or with those and staying with that. So I felt like he'd get a decent enough trip down towards the inside. And as I remind Steve every time I bring it up, I know I work for Andy Beyer, but Beyer and Time Form US are under one umbrella now, so it's okay for me to reference them as usable figures. I think they're very useful. I thought the 9 was a little interesting dropping in class. Also felt like he'd probably be, a square enough price. What is he now? Well, he's 9 to 5. So much for me. This is my Jonathan Kinchin impression talking about horses that should be fair prices that are bet below 2 to 1. So I apologize. No more.
You can't
from me.
You can't trust that company with the letters, Nick. They gave all 3 of us our starts. So
that's true, right?
You gotta be skeptical.
You have to.
Or who's it going to be in this Tampa race?
I mean, look, I kind of agree with Nick. I kind of looked at Lion Charmer as the horse that I was most interested in. I was just fearful that from a price standpoint would be a little bit overplayed, stepping up. And again, I'm not somebody that's typically opposed to taking maiden winners last out, taking on non-winners of 2 life. I really don't think there's a giant difference there because the N2L horses typically don't like to pass one another, get the job done. There's a reason they're in this condition. For that reason, I ended up going on the far outside, hoping that the 10 would be able to clear off to the front. And this is not a horse that, if the horse is sitting third, I have no interest. I don't think there's any chance for the horse to get it done. I would hope that there's going to be an aggressive ride out of there. I would say bordering on any circumstances. Just go to the front and take your chances. The horse is best out there on the front end, stretching out in distance, going back from turf to dirt. I went with the 10 Minnesota Lucky, also thinking that the price would be a little bit more appetizing. 8 compared to 2.5 to 1. I would be content with that as long as the horse ends up on the front.
JK, have you gotten your act wired on straight?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, you saw me pop the champagne. I like the 1, Hold the Spice. A lot of times in these turf races where you can't really identify who you love the most, I want a good horse who's going to get a good trip. And I feel like Hold the Spice is going to sit right there in the pocket. And if he can get lucky out there at 5 to 1, I'm good with that. That's where I landed. And then I also used the 7 on my other entry, Gate Crew, which I'm probably not close enough. But if you're looking at trying to get out on the day, try 1-7 Exacta Box.
There's still plenty of drama here on the leaderboard for these folks on the bubble. Of course, with horseplayers.com and these pick and praise, you can see who has what. So you can really go in there and look and see what your path to victory is, if any. It's kind of interesting just to scroll down and look at some of these names on the bubble, many of whom are able to at least try to pick off that 21st spot, which sits at 42.80. We have the 20 people at a cap or above $64. That's going to be a lot trickier for the folks involved. But we're going to see what happens here at Tampa, getting ready to pop. And Matt, we'll let you once again talk us through. And before they go, if you want to give your thoughts on what Nick and I were talking about before regarding the potential wacky baseball schedule we're going to be looking at this year.
I mean, I'm at the point now where anything is better than nothing, and I think not just from a business standpoint, whether it's Major League Baseball or the NBA or any professional league, but from a morale standpoint for all of us. I think just getting something out there. Yes, it's going to be different. It's going to look weird, but if there's going to be a ball game or potentially 2 on every night, I think that's going to go a long way for all of our sort of psyche. I'm not opposed to it. This year, 2020 in general, it's why I've said I hope it's going to happen. Belmont is the first race of the Triple Crown. I don't care that it's not the sort of traditional layout of Derby, Preakness, Belmont. This year is not normal. Like there's no part of this if you're using, the air quotes normal as they break from the gate as the barometer, you're going to be disappointed because nothing is normal about this year. So just I'm at a point where take victories where you can get them and hope that some regular sort of normalcy resumes in time. They go into the first turn for the first time. The 10, the rider, bit of an aggressive move. Scott Spieth clearing over, a little bit of a check from the 7 down in the pocket, but the 10 has cleared off to the front. Got hit late at 6-1 and is clear by about a length and a half, 2 lengths, going 23-2. Nick, obviously the Astros scandal, the Red Sox have been tied up in it as well. Is there any issue going forward as far as like the folks in Texas, as far as Astros fans? Is there any sort of remorse?
Well, I mean, I can't think of a team that would rather play in front of empty stadiums all year than them. Given what they face. So, I mean, it's a little tough, and I'm as unabashed an Astros fan as you'll find, but it'd be a little tough to not say that you feel like, wow, what a bunch of a-holes. You get a little angry at what they did. I know the people from Dallas have been the ones that I know that actually call themselves Rangers fans have been razzing me a little bit about it. But hey, I mean, it's a probably a little bit of a jerky way of saying it, but they didn't take the trophy away. So it's we'll still have that year. We'll still know that they did a lot of things below board. They did a lot of things above board too. I mean, they played a lot of games by the rules. The bottom line, and all the Dodgers fans out there can get as mad at me as they want, but in Game 7 of the World Series, they had every chance to win and didn't perform. So
I still think there's that element of, yes, I mean, I don't think anybody can argue with the fact that there were clearly advantages taken, but at the end of the day, it wasn't like you were dealing with a team that otherwise would have won 75 games, and I guess that's the piece where I see both sides of the coin. And obviously coming from me as a Red Sox fan, like that one year where all along I maintained they were not as good as the overall record suggested, because the pitching staff was just really not that good when you go back and look at it. But who am I to sit here and cast shadows when they won 118 games total or whatever it was, regular season and postseason combined, and to think that there wasn't any sort of correlation with Cora being there? Again, we're going down another path here. 10-7-6 is your final order of finish.
Good call on the 10. Yeah, that was a
very nice pick. Let's hope folks cash there, and if you did, we're doing this for charity. The proceeds are going to charity, which is great, but we're also encouraging donations, and you can go over to our link, trfinc.org/players, for a TRF donation. Obviously you can donate directly to the TAA as well, but the other cool thing, and this was JK's brainstorm a couple of weeks ago, over at our TRF link, we've now added a way to link to the New York racetrack chaplaincy, and they're doing great work as well, dealing with New York in this difficult time. So we encourage folks, especially if you cashed on that 10, to go ahead and make a donation over there as well. We really do appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity to come on here and just hang out. I mean, this has been one of my favorite hours of the week for the last 3 weeks, and it's great to connect with fans and chat with you and have an opportunity to see people like our buddy Nick Tammaro.
We have an inquiry and an objection hung for this race at Tampa.
Interesting. Not on the winner, right?
Yes, on the winner, because going into the first turn, you had stepped out for a refill. The 10 certainly came over on the 7 going into the first turn. Look, is it a 6-length difference? No, probably not. But I at least respect that they're going to take a look at it. Granted,
a foul is a foul at Tampa, though, isn't it?
I'm not going to say anymore. I'm not going to say anymore. But I'm at least happy they're going to look at it.
Well,
the 7 ran second, for crying out loud.
I mean, we saw this the other day, that DQ in the first at Tampa on Saturday that cost me a lot of money, had nothing to do with a placing. But
you said, I tell you what, I typically look at this sort of thing, and I whether it's right or wrong, I kind of look at it and say it's by the letter of the law. A foul is a foul, X, Y, and Z. When you win by 7 or 6, I suppose it could have made a difference. And it doesn't make a difference to me, because it's not like I was going to win this contest. So if they take the horse down, they take the horse down. I just think it would be a bit of a disappointing call, just because the horse
with the rules.
underneath
With
a
the
mild
rules that
message.
we're used to, especially, it would be kind of insane. Does it matter, JK? Do me a favor and take a look at the leaderboard on the bubble and see if this who in the contest is having to sweat this thing.
Yeah, so we're looking at the top, 21?
21.
Yeah, so in 21st right now is Ben Burkett, and he's got the 9, 3, 2, 9, 9, the 7. It matters for Paul Caradona, who has the 7, who's in 27th place. So at the 7, well, he'll probably get in the mix no matter what.
You think the place money will get him there?
The 10, Michael Edwards with the 10.
We have a surprise guest, JK. I see a surprise guest popping in the bottom frame here. This is fantastic stuff. Good work on whoever was responsible for this. We're now going to bring in, to answer our question about jockeys looking under their shoulders and various other things, Hall of Famer Gary Stevens is here with us on the show. Gary, how are you this afternoon?
I'm good, but I can barely hear you guys. I'm all new at this right now, guys, so I can barely hear. But what about this looking under the shoulder and over the shoulder and under the elbow?
Yes, that was the question that came up that we started speculating that we should bring you in. When a rider does, we as horse players don't love it when our jockey looks back. We feel like, hey, you should be focused on, go one way to the wire going forward. What's your opinion of riders looking back? Did you ever do it? Why do riders do it?
Listen, one reason that I would do it, and I did it very rarely when I was in a hard drive, but coming into the lane, especially on a developing young horse, I would look back under my arm, take a little peek, just to see if there was any competition coming, so I could save something for the next possible race, or if I was about to get into to a rough and tumble race. If I had a lot of horse, I didn't want to let them out until I had to, I didn't want to ask them to run until I absolutely had to. So I had more strength for the horse to finish with and save something if I possibly could. So that's one reason. We used to call Chris McCarron rear view because he might look back under his arm between his legs 10 or 15 times during a race. And my dad told me when I was a young boy and still got after me at the end of my career, hey, what are you looking back for? They're coming and they're trying to beat you. Just focus on that finish line up in front of you. So I'm not going to argue with you boys a whole lot about that.
Oh, that's so funny. And when you notice things about riders that most of us just blows over our heads. Are there particular riders today you see using that technique a lot? When if you're on a horse and you see the rider look back, when is that a good sign for you? With which riders these days?
That they're loaded with horse. I mean, I love watching, being an analyst and sitting there watching a race at the desk now. And I did it when I was riding, just watching a race that I may not be riding in, but there were certain guys, when they took a peek back, you knew they were loaded for bear. Or if you see it, here's another good one. If you see a rider in a race that's on the lead, reach up and pull their goggles down, pull a pair of goggles down at the 3/8 pull, and they've been in front the whole way, that's a telltale sign that hey, you can start walking to the window. I saw Joe Rocco do it the other day. Unfortunately, I think he was DQ'd, and that may have been DQ'd in that race. But yeah, I mean, when you see a guy reach up there and just kind of calmly and coolly pull it down real slow, and that's like giving them the finger and saying, hey. When you're sitting back, if you're the guy sitting back behind, they take a peek at you and they reach up and you see their heel go down, and they're like, no, I'm completely loaded. So don't even think about coming after me right now. You're going to just kill yourself.
Gary,
JK, you froze up with this middle picture. I've never done this before, but I don't know. You're about ready to clap your hands, big smile on your face. Your eyes are closed. This is classic. I wish
I'm back
I
now.
could screenshot
Gee,
this.
look
I'm
at
gonna
this.
try. I might hang up on you.
Oh, that's amazing. So
Oh,
I
it worked.
I got
Look
a
at that,
question
G.
for you, Gary. The slow goggle pulling down for the jockey, is that, I know you follow other sports, is that the equivalent of the bat flip in baseball?
Say that again. I was trying to put my speaker on. I don't even
That's
think.
okay.
Oh, here. This might help.
You got it?
Uh-oh.
When you
Wrong one.
we'll try one more time, and then we'll, we can all, it's
Oh, wait. Here's the genius. She might be able to help me.
Let's get, there we go. We've got the
I got it turned all the way up, Maddie.
That's
Put your
amazing.
AirPods in.
Oh,
Where are your AirPods?
the pods are
there's a dog,
downstairs on the table.
Why did I do everything for you?
This is good
Jesus.
stuff. This is
Oh,
good
no.
stuff. Oh,
All right, sorry.
no, you're good. I was just asking if it was the equivalent of the bat flip in baseball, like
Oh, yeah.
just the supreme confidence and arrogance, just the slow goggle.
Exactly. Yeah, right when they're getting ready to make that trot for a grand slam home run, the bottom of the
Exactly.
ninth, and they're down by 2.
AirPods in so you can hear me.
I'm
Look.
empty.
Here, hold that for me, Mad Dog. We're going to Plan B here.
I love it.
How can you hear any of them?
I don't know. Oh shit.
I'm appreciating the Maddie. We've had the theme of the show today has been kids
They
cameos,
just
and
kicked
it's
on.
good to see the famous Maddie, who we've all
No.
seen her work at.
I don't think
at
they're
Santa
not connected to this phone, right? They're connected to my iPad.
Hold on.
I don't know how
Oh,
Gary
well.
was hearing us at all. He's got supersonic hearing, apparently.
No,
Like a bat.
they ain't working. I have to do it from the thing. Yeah.
This is amazing.
How do you hear them?
Cheers.
You sound better. Everything's good. JK, why don't you work? JK, why don't you workshop some questions for Gary for
Turn
the
it up
talk
or
show?
something.
I have it turned up.
Put it on a speaker.
I tried to.
G,
What?
you there?
Yeah.
You see my glass is empty. I need to hydrate.
Yeah, you do need to hydrate. Take 5 and go hydrate.
Is that how you guys roll on the Fox show?
Never.
No, not on the Fox show, but after the Fox show.
After the Fox show, we always hydrate. Most definitely.
Oh, fantastic.
I saw some stuff on the news this morning, with all of us being sort of on lockdown and everything. This guy, he tweeted into the news, the local news here, that his wife was pissed off at him for his day drinking. And I'm like, what else are you supposed to do if you're, it's like this thing has got to end soon.
I resemble that remark, Gary. I resemble that remark. Oh my goodness. Yeah, the Brooklyn bunker has turned into a bit of a bar during the pandemic.
What happened with the inquiry, Pete? Did it?
Let's see. Let's take a look. Matt, have you seen? We'll bring Matt Bernier back in. He's actually paying attention to what's going on in life. Did they dismiss that DQ? And are we?
Yeah,
final?
they put that away. They kept the 10 up. 10 paid 15 and change. The 7 horse runs second, $12 to place. So I don't know if that made a difference with the contest, but obviously, if the 10 had been taken down, it would have shaken some things up. But overall, again, and I mean, I'm sure people have different opinions, but when you win by 1/8 of a mile, did that little check in the first turn make the difference? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. But they made no change down there at Tampa.
Seemed like a good no DQ. I'm going to run through our 21 qualifiers for tomorrow's Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge contest. And then, hey, I mean, now that Gary can actually hear us, I say we hang out with him for another 5 minutes before we get out of here. And JK, I'll leave you to lead that conversation. But let's just hit it. Tony Joe, our friend of the show, qualified for the Breeders' Cup contest 2 weeks ago in this very event. He's the overall winner with 91.80, and then I'll just run him down. Brian Ivory.
No, updated
Hunter
Pete.
Archibald.
Updated Pete. Pete, he's not the winner.
We got
He's
a new
second.
one.
He is second.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, Justin Dew.
Look at that.
Justin Dew
Another
is your
friend of
overall
the
winner.
show. Justin Dew, who left us a voicemail the other day, gets it done. Then we got Tony Joe, Brian Ivory, Hunter Archibald, Curtis Meyer, Gary Wright, John Gasper, Sam Stinson, Nick Hemmingson, Chris Couples, Mike Borale, Billy Moore, Drew Coatney, Stephen Dudenoth, Michael Bailey, Robert Matthews, Michael Bailey again, Dylan Donnelly, Michael Webb, Rick Broth, Matt O'Leary gets in there, Michael Edwards. Oh no, Michael Edwards is our bubble person. Matt O'Leary, our 21st and final qualifier to tomorrow's Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge event.
Gee, we were just talking about the DQ or non-DQ at Tampa, and we were talking about whether it mattered or not. And I figured in your career you've had some pretty interesting DQ stories. So I thought I would try to set you up to tell a story about a time you got DQ'd or didn't get DQ'd you could think of.
Not hearing anything.
Did we lose you, Gary?
Yeah.
We might have lost him. Or is he back?
No,
No,
back.
he's got it.
Hold on. I'm trying to get
All
these
right,
iPad. These.
Yeah.
I still can't hear you. Give me 2 seconds.
Still can't?
All right.
We
It
got
was a good
you.
question, JK. I wished I'd thought of it.
I'm sure there's some good ones. He told us a good Paco story the other day on the Fox show. He told us that he claimed foul on Paco, and Paco got mad at him.
We can hear
Yeah,
you,
we got-
Gary. Can you
got
hear
you.
us?
Oh, I gotta tune it down. I got the pods in, so I'm good now. Finally got them connected. That,
Blowing
I
out
had
the
to go.
eardrums.
All right. So
You
what
got
do
it?
you want? No. Yeah.
I was talking about DQs, a story in your career, maybe where you should have got DQ'd, but you didn't, or you didn't get DQ'd, or you should have got someone else DQ'd. I thought you might have a good DQ story from your career.
Well, the worst takedown. What are you doing? Well, they can't see me like that. No, they can't. They were seeing my crotch. Thanks for your help, Maddie.
Oh, amazing.
No. Well, I'm telling a story right now.
Okay, tell your story while I set it up.
The worst takedown was, what are you doing?
I'm putting this here.
Oh, that's way better. She's getting high tech. But
I like it.
in the meantime, oh yeah, there we go. Yeah. So, thanks, Maddie. But I'm telling a story. Worst takedown ever I had was She's a Tiger in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies. What was it? 2013, and it was one of those deals. Javier came on the outside of me, and I was giving it the slow drift. We're going to see something like that take down tomorrow, Jonathan. We're going to have to discuss. I remember, I think it's the 8th race tomorrow or the 9th race, the takedown of, I don't have my papers in front of us, but Stewie Elliott did some race riding on Ricardo Santana the last time these two horses met up, but it was classic race riding. And anyway, I did the drift in that race, and bad part about it was $2 million. And it was the worst thing because I could talk on the telephone with the stewards, man. I was like a lawyer when I'd get on the phone. And I laid this story on him, and I felt pretty confident. And at Santa Anita, you walk down in the below ground into this office, and there's you get on the phone, and there's videos down there going on. So you plead your case and everything. And I'm walking back up the stairs, and I'm like, all right, it's all good. And right when I got up to the top stair, I looked out in the infield, and they got the big matrix board, and they're using an NBC shot of a head on low angle, all blown up. And I just went, oh shit. And I walked over.
You couldn't talk your way out of that one.
No, I walked over to Jeff Bondi, the trainer, and Jeff had a big old wad of Copenhagen going in his mouth, and he says, "What do you think? What do you think, Jock?" And I said, "We're screwed." And about that time, Trevor Denman's voice came out, "Ladies and gentlemen."
Ladies and gentlemen.
And
Ladies
you
and
know
gentlemen.
when you hear that. And Jeff, he's got that big wad of chew in there, and he just went.
he he turned beet white all in about 3/5 of a second. And I walked over and I unsaddled her and weighed out after the DQ, and I'm walking back through the tunnel there at Santa Anita, and I'm not a happy camper. And one of these journalists came up to me, a reporter, and I won't mention any names, but he said, "So how are you feeling right now?" And JK knows me well enough. There were some pretty good explicitives that went on, and so anyway, I'm some kind of hot, and I get back to the jocks room, and I had a text from my brother. He says, "I know you." He says, "Forget about this." He said, "You got to ride Beholder later on this afternoon. Get focused on what you got going on." And anyway, it turned out to be a hell of a weekend with Mucho Macho Man and a couple others and Beholder and stuff. But I was telling JK a story. JK, did you already tell the story about Paco in Miami?
No, I mentioned it, but I kind of butchered it. I'll let you do it the right way.
Yeah, so I'm riding this horse. I fly in there to ride Mucho Macho Man, the Sunshine Millions Classic, and Tom Proctor put me on this old war horse that he had called Old Time Hockey, and he would always fight it out. And he wasn't the prettiest moving horse, but had a heart this freaking big. And so I come into the lane, down on the inside. Paco's on the outside of me, and we bump once at about the 8th pole, and I'm up against the fence. So I lean out into him. He leans into me, and now we're just like this all the way through the lane. It's like green light. So we're boom. I don't know if I've won or not. He doesn't know. And I come back, and they hung his number up. It was one of those head bobbers, and I told Tom, I said, if we didn't win this photo, I'm going to claim foul. So I went over, I claimed foul, and it was about a 5-minute inquiry, and they didn't take me down. And I got back in the jocks room, and Paco looks at me, and he says, "Man, Jesus, I can't believe this." I says, "What?" He says, "You robbed the effing bank, and you call the cops." So that was, I mean, that's all I could do was laugh. And so now every time he sees me, the bank robber, coming out of his mouth, I'm like, "Yeah, Paco, me, the bank robber."
That's brilliant. I don't think we can end on a better note than that, Gary. That's great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on here and joining our little virtual happy hour. We really appreciate it immensely, as we do the contributions of our guests, Nick Tammaro and Marshall Gramm today. Of course, we got to give props to the great Matt Bernier and a little guy we call Jonathan Kinchin. We'll see him this weekend with Gary on the Fox Sports shows. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll also thank our friends at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, New York Racetrack Chaplaincy, hopefully the beneficiaries of all that we're doing today, and Peter Rotundo, especially at Breeders' Cup, horseplayers.com. Most of all, though, I want to thank all of you, the listeners, for tuning into the podcast, watching the live stream, participating in the contest. We're doing all this because of the good energy we get from you guys, and we really appreciate your support throughout this difficult time and really always as well. Producer Craig, DJ Unstable, whatever you want to call him, thanks so much to him as well. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. In the Money Media's business manager is Drew Coatney, who will be playing in the BCBC contest tomorrow over at horseplayers.com. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. May you win all your photos.